For years, Great Britain's Brexit has made the headlines, but everything is far from settled. And now another head of state speaks for the first time about the possibility of leaving the European Union and provides a vague explanation for this. A holy war, a jihad, was being led by the EU. With these accusations, Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban indicated that he was considering leaving the European Union. In a speech to supporters in Budapest on Saturday, the right-wing politician called for the EU to show tolerance towards Hungary. Otherwise, it will not be possible to continue on a common path. There's something where she's so right, not about the tolerance thing, about the common path. Orban spoke of this a few days before the European Court of Justice, the ECJ in Luxembourg, is to rule on the EU's new rule of law mechanism. The regulation stipulates that countries that violate the principles of the rule of law can have funds from the common EU budget cut. Hungary and Poland had appealed against the mechanism decided in December 2020. The ECJ is scheduled to announce its judgment on Wednesday. EU bodies and human rights organizations accuse Orban, who has governed Hungary since 2010, of dismantling democracy and the rule of law. Orban countered this assessment on Saturday. For them, the rule of law is a tool they want to use to knead us into something that resembles them, he said. Well, he still didn't get it. However, Hungary would not want to become like Western Europe, just as it does not expect the West to adopt Hungarian asylum or family policies. Hungary wants to keep the EU together despite growing cultural alienation. That is why Budapest has repeatedly made offers of tolerance to both Brussels and Berlin. And it's really hard for me just not to start laughing right now. I'm saying, there's no other solution, only tolerance. This is the only way we can find a common path, he said. Almost 80% of people in Hungary welcome EU membership. In the past, Orban had repeatedly launched sharp attacks against the bureaucrats in Brussels, but held back on threats to leave. His annual State of the Union address coincided with the start of the campaign on Saturday. On April 3rd, Hungarians will elect a new parliament. For the first time, Orban is facing a united opposition whose alliance ranges from left to right. Opinion polls predict a neck-and-neck race. In Switzerland, against the will of the government, tobacco advertising has to be further restricted. According to projections, 57% of voters in a referendum voted in favor of the bill, which the government had recommended rejecting. They suffered two more defeats. Their media package with state subsidies for newspapers, magazines and online media failed, as did the planned abolition of an entrepreneurial tax, which would have saved the state 200 million francs a year. Tobacco advertising must now be banned wherever children and young people can see it. For example, there may no longer be any posters with tobacco products in the public, and advertising in cinemas, in the media or on sports grounds is also taboo. So far, tobacco advertising is only banned on radio and television, and those aimed directly at minors. The government went too far, they say. Switzerland is an important location for the tobacco industry. The largest tobacco companies in the world have branches there. Tobacco is grown, processed and exported. The industry is undermining prevention policy and influencing tobacco legislation, writes the Federal Commission for Tobacco Prevention. In a 2021 index of government efforts to limit the influence of the tobacco industry, Switzerland was ranked second to last out of 80 countries. While Germany, where I'm sitting, came in 59th place. With a media package, the government want to provide 151 million Swiss francs to support newspaper magazine publishers. Many suffer from the loss of ads and subscribers and struggle to survive. Among other things, the existing support for delivery should be expanded. For the first time, online media should receive money directly under certain conditions. Opponents warned that the media would lose their independence and would no longer report neutrally about the government. And according to projections, 56% of voters rejected those plans. And as expected, a fourth national bill was clearly rejected. The initiative of animal rights activists envisaged a radical ban on animal testing. Products that were developed using animal testing should also no longer be allowed to be imported. According to projections, 79% rejected this. The private aid organization SOS Méditerranée has rescued around 200 people in distress in the central Mediterranean. On Sunday morning, the crew of the Ocean Viking brought more than 20 people on board, the organization said. On the night of Sunday, they took almost 90 people from an overcrowded wooden boat. The volunteers rescued more than 90 people in the Maltese search and rescue zone on Saturday afternoon. This means that there are around 200 rescued boat migrants on board the Norwegian flagship, including several dozen unaccompanied minors. Various private sea rescuers travel to the central Mediterranean again and again to rescue people who get into distress at sea while fleeing from the coast of North Africa towards the EU. The German aid organization Sea-Watch is currently on its way to its intended area of operations in the Mediterranean. The crews usually bring the rescued people to the Italian island of Sicily. Italy has been calling for a new European distribution mechanism for some time now. However, many migrants do not stay in the Mediterranean country, but make their way to other EU countries or the United Kingdom. Critics of private sea rescue are of the opinion that it would be better if criminal smugglers didn't bring so many people into distress in the first place. Some EU interior ministers suspect the sea rescuers of working with Libyan smugglers. The sea rescuers, on the other hand, state that they strictly adhered to international laws. After Denmark and Sweden, Norway says goodbye to almost all remaining corona measures. After a strong easing almost 2 weeks ago, most of the other restrictions in the Scandinavian country are now no longer applicable, including the obligation to wear a mask and the 1 meter distance rule. Distance between us is no longer necessary, said Prime Minister Jonas Gahr Støre in Oslo. As a symbol of the lifting of the mask requirement, he put his mouth and nose protection in the inside pocket of his jacket. The pandemic no longer poses a major health threat to most people, Støre said. The Omicron variant of the coronavirus causes a milder course of the disease, and the vaccination provided good protection. According to the Prime Minister, 2 recommendations remain in place. Only adults with symptoms should be tested, and those who test positive as adults should stay at home for 4 days. All entry requirements are lifted. Støre had already announced a comprehensive easing of the corona restrictions at the beginning of February. This meant, among other things, that there were no longer any restriction on the serving of alcoholic beverages and on sports and other leisure activities. However, Norwegians still had to keep their distance from each other and continue to wear face masks in shops, public transport and other crowded situations. And I'll see you in my next video. Bis gleich.